podcast. I'm Paul James Caden, and this is the Spirit Side. Today, joining me on the show is my co host from People Under the Stairs, family member, friend, a good man, Stan Wanglund. Welcome to the show, Stan. It's been a while.
Yeah, gee, hi, Paul. We do so many shows together on different things. I haven't done a Spirit Side show and since I can remember when. It's so lovely to be here and to have that special tone and freedom on the Spirit Side, to talk about things spiritual.
It is, I don't think we've done a show on the Spirit Side since last year this time. And
No,
I was listening to some of the shows, and we've done some really good shows during the holiday season last year. So I certainly wanted to try to recapture that lightning in a bottle in 2019.
well, thank you, brother. I feel the same way. It's, like yourself, if I do a show like Just Thinking, it's not a spiritually oriented show. Although, you can bring a little bit of that in there. When we do the People Under the Stairs, it's the same thing. We can have a little bit of the spiritual in there, but that's not the primary focus of the show. It's not
Right.
it's not why people are coming to hear that particular show. So I try and honor that with folks. But the spirit side is very nice. I listen to many of the shows that you do, and they get into lots of like you say, very interesting philosophical, theological, metaphysical, whatever you'd like to call it.
Yeah, I like to try to keep it a very open-ended show that touches every aspect of life and spirituality, and that way it doesn't get dull. I mean, for some people, they prefer to talk about one thing, whether it's the UFOs or the paranormal. But
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I've noticed a lot of people, much like your show, just thinking. You talk on a number of subjects. It's pretty much whatever you're thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you kind of pigeonhole that into just one thing where every show is political, you,
You
you start to
got
get a little you start to get a little bit of creator's fatigue and feeling like, after a while it becomes more burdensome because you're just talking about that one thing over and over again, which it can be a little dry sometimes.
Yeah, and you become very myopic in your thinking. When you do that, with I'm glad you mentioned that, and I hope we're not getting off the topic because I think it ties into spirituality. I know I've made a conscious, I'm a very political person, and
Hmm.
I've made a very conscious effort. I don't think I've really had any a real political show, and think of what's happening with the impeachment stuff and everything else like that. No real dedicated political show, probably in I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. And I do 6 shows a week on just thinking. And I really haven't done that. I might have mentioned it in passing, but I did a show just for today that came out called America Needs a Reset. And I think that would be a good topic to do on the spirit side. Religion needs a reset, maybe. you know,
Oh, I talk about that all the time.
I know you do. That's why.
It's Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but you would think that I was going to use politics as the basis for the reset, but it wasn't. It was really based on commercials from the Hallmark Channel where they had a lesbian couple and the Peloton bike controversy, and then something that applies to this show with religious folks from churches, making political statements with nativity scenes. you know
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, I can understand the varying points of view on all those three issues, but the point of my show was that we needed a reset, because people are so divisive when you have major cultural changes or major religious changes or changes in your family or anything else. You gotta give people some time to get used to things. You
You
just
do.
can't come out all at once sometimes and just beat somebody over the head with something. I mean, it depends upon the issue. So yeah, it's you can become a one-trick pony. I try not to do that. And this was a good topic that you're going to go over today.
Yeah, I had a couple things that inspired me to talk about this, and I think you're just the guy to talk about this with. And folks, what we're talking about on the spirit side today is estranged family members and friends during the holiday season. you know, a lot of people, that I've talked to, they say they're alone. They don't see their parents anymore or their siblings, or, if they happen to be separated or divorced, they don't see their children anymore.
Hmm.
So it's a widespread thing where, people are estranged. They feel alone, or they don't know why. And there's a variety of reasons for that. And hopefully we can touch on some of those in this particular show. But you being a psychologist, and give the people once again who may not remember you on the spirit side a little bit of your background, what you've done for a
Oh,
living here in Broome County.
oh, yeah, not just in Broome County, all through the eastern seaboard of the United States. My name is Stan Wanglund, and currently I'm retired as a full-time psychologist, but I do still teach, which I've been doing for over 20 years for SUNY. I teach online courses, and I've taught there live courses in child development and adolescence and general psychology. I've taught abnormal psychology. I've taught in staff development. I've been a management consultant and have owned my own business, but I also work for the state of New York and the state of Georgia as a supervising staff psychologist. Then an administrator for over 35 years of all kinds of programs, whether it be in the Division for Youth, where I was treatment director, to when I moved over to the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities and opened up their first day treatment program for disabled folks, and was a chief of services for adult services and children's services. I was joint venture clinic program administrator for many years, the eligibility coordinator, and I was the director for over 20 years of the high risk birth clinic, which dealt with families and infants from actually prior to birth till they were approximately 8 years old. So, my history is one of service as a psychologist and administrator, helping people out. My degrees are in psychology and clinical psychology, and and then just out of nowhere, you just due to the way life takes you, for spending close to 3 decades working with children and becoming kind of a specialist in autism and ADHD, things like that, and also working with families. You talk about who become estranged, families who were crushed
Yeah.
by having children who are born with very, very significant disabilities. Today we can, not even have to use that term. We can say, people who are differently abled or exceptional, but the bottom line is that years ago, and most people still feel that, if you have somebody and they really are terribly at a disadvantage from doing what everybody else does, that they're disabled, they're not abled. Uh, but I like that term, that they're differently abled. But anyway, I hope you get the idea. It's kind of a lot like being a very spiritual person. One of the things that I always wanted to be when I was a kid was actually I wanted to be a minister or a scientist.
Hmm.
And I got a chance to be both of them by being a psychologist. You work very closely with people in their intimate kinds of things and trying to help them out, and either in a practical way if you're disabled, or if you're in jail, or you're in the middle of a divorce, or you're all alone in the world and you're in a hospice program or something like that. So that's the kind of stuff I've done for almost 40 years.
Yeah, and there you go, folks. He's been around the block more than a couple times, and
A couple of times.
that's something I like to bring to the spirit side. Not only, I always tell people, their spirituality, but also educate yourself on things. There's so much in religion and spirituality that's kind of over the falls in a barrel. Uh, Keep a check on your own mental, psychological health and peace of mind, because some of the stuff that happens in the world can really drive people batty and get them thinking in some really, I think, detrimental ways, even taking all
Hmm.
the joy out of life, where they don't.
Hmm.
You've heard me talk about it. These people, Christmas, the holidays. It's from the devil. It has these deep, horrible
Oh,
pagan, and
sure.
they're literally afraid. and they estrange themselves from their families, where they don't celebrate. They won't even sit down and eat a meal with them because they feel that they're honoring demons. I mean, I just find that to be very sad, but also, more than a little concerning, as I always say, to put yourself mentally in that position in life where
Mhm.
you take absolutely no joy, where you're just looking for danger and darkness and doom everywhere.
Well,
But
I'm sorry, Paul.
oh no, go ahead and finish your
I
thought on
was going
that.
to say that people being disconnected has always been a theme. It's the nature of the estrangement process of being disconnected. And since this is a spiritual show, as I was giving you that rather illustrious background of mine, and I'm just teasing when I'm saying that been a career civil servant. I can't tell you how blessed I have been to be able to spend my life serving other people. The only person who's truly benefited has been me by that. It's like having the best job in America when you can do what you want.
I
But
got
here's
that.
my point on the disconnection. One of the things is on your show, you have many people who were spiritual people. People come in with pseudoscience and things like that. I want your audience to know that I'm a scientist. I mean, I'm a for real scientist. I believe in empirical evidence. I believe in the scientific method. I teach critical thinking. And if anything on this show, or any show that I'll do with you, Paul, always remind me to make this statement. I find it very disconcerting. I'd have no problem if people are not, if people do not have a spiritual side. That's their choice. If people don't, believe in religion, don't believe in a deity, a divine presence, whatever, I can understand that. That's an individual choice. And I happen to not be one of them. I happen to definitely believe in God. I'm a Christian. I don't pump that down anybody else's throat or make that a prerequisite in a relationship with anybody or anything else like that. But this is my point, and I hope this may be the most important thing that I can say on the spirit side, and I think Paul will agree with me at the end. There's an illusion. There's a false premise that if you live in the 21st century and for some reason that you believe in a higher power, that you believe in the worthiness of spirituality, expressing that, understanding it, developing that, that your intellectual abilities have been compromised in some way,
Hmm.
that you're not thinking rationally, that you're believing in genies, whatever. And I wanted to tell people that that is one of the worst things to believe or to get into, and it's a form of elitism, and it's a wedge of divisiveness, because when you're a spiritual person and you think that doesn't coincide with science, you're also making a mistake, because science tells us how things work, and spirituality, I think, tells us why things work the way they work, and there's a tremendous difference in the two. And
Exactly.
you're mixing apples and oranges, and there's absolutely, I can go in and I can deal with and which I have for 40 years, the top psychologist in the state of New York. I can go to legal hearings. I can do whatever it is. I am never at a loss because I happen to be a Christian. I don't bring in metaphysical things into the world of science. They have a happy and balanced parallel meaning to one another, if I'm making any sense to you.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. I
but
agree.
but they each have their place. It's almost like the thing in the Bible where they try and trick Jesus and say, what about taxes? And Jesus says, well, give to Caesar, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. I think it works the same way. Render unto science what's science, and render what to the spirit what's the spirit, and you never have any
Yeah.
problem in life. You don't
Well,
need all these.
I talk about that kind of thing here too, and what people don't understand is some of the biggest names in science that are hardcore atheists, and they want to disprove that there was any higher power or consciousness intervening in the creation or development of man. And some of these people, and I'm sure you know this, that in their own studies that they have, looking back at the fossil records and, all the evidence, and some of them had come right out and said it looks as if life just suddenly appeared on the earth out of nowhere, but yet we know that can't be. So they're looking as to how it appeared out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, they want to take, God or creation, out of the equation, but
Right.
that's proving very hard to do. Anything is speculation at this point, and to me, that's not real science. Science is starting out with a question and working to, the logical conclusion or theory. And if you're already looking and saying, well, we have this evidence that looks like life just kind of randomly came out of nowhere all of a sudden at a certain period,
Mm-hmm.
but we're automatically going to close the door on one of the possible theories or solutions or answers to that problem, then you're not a real scientist, because you're already
Right.
saying, oh, this God, this some other force. No, so
Right.
you're already going down a track that's, I don't know, what's a good word to use for that? A little blind, a little lost, a little missing a
Yeah.
tire on the car. I don't know.
Well, I took us off on another direction there a little bit, but I think it's going to tie into the show overall, because if you are unfortunate enough to get cancer or have a death in your family, these things are going to happen to everybody. I can tell you that if you go to Cancer Treatment Centers of America, or you go to the Mayo Clinic, or you go to Lord's Hospital, which you just took your stepdaughter to, you're going to have chaplaincy services. You're going to have people who not only treat your mind and your body, but they also treat your spirit. They treat your spiritual side. And it's an important element in human behavior, and it's an important way to connect with other people, to connect with the universe, to connect with the right kinds of, and there are right and wrong kinds of ideas, at least in my belief system. I know that Albert Ellis don't think there's a right solution to things, but I think there are some things that, we call them morals or values or belief systems. I think there are some things that are generally that are good rules, and spiritual people, in many times are searching and finding a lot of them. And you're not going to find them by science alone, again, because that's not the job of science. That's the job of spirituality. That's the job of those things. And it is going to tie in today with our show on being estranged from other people, because it's very easy to become estranged from other people when you yourself are estranged from the universe, you're estranged from nature, you're estranged from your community, you have hostile or negative feelings towards the world, you don't have a clear sense of values and belief. You could take those out in your immediate reactions in your family and friends and things like that. You develop a very odd or counterproductive systems of thinking and behaving.
And it does tie in, when I was thinking about this podcast earlier, one of the things I wanted to bring up, which we just kind of answered, with all of that, is something, again, going back to, the writings of the Bible, the wheat being separated from the chaff, and Christ talking about, I don't know if it was the Gospels or one of the epistles, where it talks about that, the last days, that separation, that the line is kind of drawn between the good and the evil, the wheat and the chaff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I'm really noticing is what you just touched on, is I'm really noticing that people that are more in touch with their spirituality, their value of life, are not really mixing so well, even if it's family members or friends they had for a long time, those who don't, or have a very selfish, and I don't say that as kind of that exclusive way of thinking, oh, we spiritual people, we're the chosen of God, we're saved and they're not. I'm just making that observation that the people that seem to really be in touch with their spirituality, their emotions, their their life values, and something you talked about on your show a little while ago, the importance of memories. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
the memories we hold dear of the past. And people that have that certain mindset and way of being, that they're just phased out of other people's lives, sometimes very abruptly, and sometimes kind of bit by bit. It's like they are the people that those who are not in touch with those kind of things just don't seem to be wanted around, because they're not. I don't know. Could it be that they're not stroking the ego of these people that are all about themselves? Is it because, I guess there could be a variety of reasons, but what would your thoughts be on that? Why there seems to be this definitive line being drawn? Even again with relatives who claim, oh, I'm spiritual, I meditate, they go to church, but it seems to be again that difference or the line drawn even between real heartfelt personal experiential
Hmm.
spirituality and a religion, and then just a religion that somebody is following. One seems to have depth, the other one perhaps not so much. But your thoughts on all that?
I think that, years ago, one of the great privileges that I had in working for a really terrific organization is we had management training several times a year, and we brought world-class speakers, people from the Harvard Business School. We brought people in from all over, and one of the biggest things that we did, and this is answering your question,
Hmm.
is that we went over things on values clarification.
Hmm.
Top managers years ago, one of the things that they would stress is values. What are your belief systems? What are the things that you value? What are the things that are important to you, and why? And this was at the core of things, because your values shape your attitudes, and your attitudes shape your behaviors. Today, we don't have any emphasis on that at all.
Hmm.
We don't have any emphasis on that that at all. And when you have relatives where you have somebody who's spiritual and then you have somebody who's not, regardless of if they're with some fundamentalist thing or a mainstream thing, or somebody's a very benevolent, thoughtful, spiritual person, that group is spending a lot of time on values. You follow what I'm trying to say? It'll be abortion, it'll be this, it'll be that, which people think is a terrible thing, but they're very values based.
Hmm.
The other part of people that are not terribly into this, they have values too, but their values are much more simplistic in today's world, and the values are very self-centered. And if you look at the shows, for any of you listening, I'm not plugging shows or anything else, but listen to the shows I've done the past couple of weeks. uh, what people are doing in the world. They are purposely going out and having solo dining and dancing, and drinking experiences. People in Japan, renting cars, and they don't put any miles on them, and they just sit in the car so they could, be a certain way. Millennials don't want to get married. They don't want to have kids. They don't want to have an engage. They want all kinds of things that are very small and detached from other things. Do you see where I'm going with this, Paul?
Absolutely, I do.
You have one group of people, if you're a religious person, and you're sitting there and saying, I have to believe in a higher power, I have to have love, I have to care about my fellow man. And then you're having another whole group of people that are terribly supporting sexless marriages, or having robots, or eating in a place where there's dining carrels where there's nobody sitting on either side of you. So them cutting you loose as a relative or somebody else is very, very easy. And for the people who do have those very strong value systems, I think they get offended, they get frightened, they become upset, they feel neglected, put down, marginalized, or whatever, by people who have maybe a more I don't want to say simplistic, but not as complex a value system, a different value system. And they can't meet a happy medium.
No, definitely
And
not.
that I think it's a lot like, and I'm gonna have to use a political thing, but it's just an example. It's like the Trump base. The reason they're so loyal to President Trump is not what President Trump. 68% of Americans are worse off or the same as they were before these terrible tax cuts that the president did that only benefit extremely wealthy people. People are not better off. The income disparity is more than it ever was. The debt is more than it ever was. But why does his base support him so much? Why? It's very simple to see. They don't want to be labeled as being stupid, ignorant people anymore. And he doesn't do that. He tells you, hey, it's all fake news. They don't know what they're talking about. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the same thing happens with spiritual people, with people who are non-spiritual. You have all kinds of people that I think are perceived as wise guys and whatever it is, and elitists on television. They're making fun of you constantly for believing, having your spiritual or religious beliefs like you're some kind of a moron, and they resent it. And then they resent it from family members, and they don't want to tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think that's an oversimplification, or do you think that's right on?
Oh, I thought that was a terrible. No, no, I think that's right on. I definitely think that it is. But now the thing going a little bit deeper into that
Mm-hmm.
is now getting a little personal for each of us.
Oh, sure.
We've all grown up with people, brothers, sisters, cousins, parents, and I know you can speak of this. My
Yeah.
wife can speak of this. I can speak of this. Many people that I talk to can. You grow up, with a certain group of people or family members, and it seems like, at least at one point, everybody seems like they're pretty close, even though families have their problems. And then you just reach a certain point in life where it's like you don't even know these people. They just fade out, fade
Mm-hmm.
away.
Mm-hmm.
You may be sitting there thinking about, gee, I remember when I used to hang out with brother Tom or cousin Johnny, and we talked about these different things, and things we wanted to do when we grew up, or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case may be. And we seem to have this common bond through our childhood and teens and 20s and 30s, or whatever it may be. And then suddenly one day, they were just gone, or they started acting very mean or creepy, like you did something wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
then they kind of shoved you out of their life. So I guess the question would be twofold. Um, have what is your experience with this? And again, what do you think the reason for it would be, that people would act in this way?
I think families have cultures, like countries have cultures or communities have cultures. I grew up in Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, like your wife did initially, and then she moved upstate New York. And It's very funny. I could get accepted anywhere to college, and I looked at people. They said, "Where are you going? You going to out of state?" I said, "What, are you crazy? I was born and raised in New York City. Why would I leave New York City? What
Hmm.
was there outside of New York City? That I couldn't get at NYU or St. John's or wherever I wanted to go. Columbia University or whatever. I wanted to stay in New York, and this is tying into the question here. Lots of people didn't have tremendous mobility years ago. If you were a farmer, you came from a farm family, you might leave to work someplace else, or you went in the military in World War II or something like that. But then you probably want to come back home. A lot of people, or a lot of people stayed where they grew up or nearby so they could be around family. My generation, I was born in 1950. We were one of those generations right after World War II where, I may have said that with school, but shortly thereafter, I was in the military. And once I got the taste of the military, I worked in New York for a while, and boom, I went wherever I wanted to go in the country. And where I had this very, very close family, and the cousins and aunts and everything else like that, people were together, they were still fighting and feuding. And there would be periods where, this person wouldn't speak to this one and this person would speak to that one. And then when you move away, you're coming back intermittently, and then you're getting on with your own life and starting over in different things. And in many cases, your family falls by the wayside, all the people that you grew up with, just due to mobility or the change in culture. And then there's families like my family was, and your wife's family, on her mother's side and everything else was, and many other families in the neighborhood, particularly when it got to be time for kids to get married. There would be all kinds of problems and hassles, and there would be this beginning of these vendettas. And you see it years ago with all the old comedians that used to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. Everything was, take my wife, please. Her mother-in-law's coming here. Look at the old shows. The mother-in-law was always a battle axe. You couldn't stand having her visit. You didn't want to go over there. Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
And what were people arguing about? They were arguing about, hey, I'm Catholic and the person you're going to marry is Protestant. We can't get married in the Catholic Church. I'm Jewish and the person that I want to marry is an Italian Catholic. You can't get married. It's against the law. And I'm being serious. And then you had all these other kinds of things. Or you had the normal things where parents were very pushy with their kids as they got married. And all kinds of, stuff would happen. Are you going to spend Christmas with us? No, you're going to spend Thanksgiving here. Why aren't you here? What about this? Oh, no, we only do this. You have all these family cultural dynamics get in. And some families are very tight-knit, and they've got all this stuff worked out. And other families, like mine was, didn't happen. It happened for me with my parents, but my father was not close with his brothers and sisters. I was the youngest child, and my brothers and sisters, my two sisters and brother, were always battling with my parents, and they were, battling with their in-laws and whatever it was, and they got into all these vendettas. And consequently, like between, what's a personal experience here, folks? Paul's wife is my niece. Man, we loved you. We didn't see each other for 40 some odd years.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, not because we were mad at each other. Nobody knew where the hell anybody was.
I remember. I remember before the two of you started talking again. She would always bring you up as the uncle who seemed like you were sane, you were nice, and you gave her first Aerosmith album and all that. And
I loved your wife.
She was like, "Gee, I don't know if I should contact him or not. Is he going to be like the rest of the family? Is he going to jump down my throat and say, what the hell are you, you contacting me for? I don't want anything to do with you." No. So it took, it was me and her son, Mike, who said, what do you got to lose? If he turns out to be, a dunderhead, you just don't answer back, or, just say, hey, sorry I bothered you. Kiss off. I'm gone. Whatever floats your boat. But, she finally did it, and there you all are today.
I can remember with if my son, we were mentioning this on one of the shows that we had on a similar topic with this, and I hope this strikes a chord with your audience, because there's a great lesson to be learned in it, and it's not a good one. It's a good one if you don't participate in vendettas or things like this, because I was a victim. Dorothy which is my niece, she was a victim. We weren't mad at one another. You get these crazy circumstances. But when my older brother, I was just 4 years old when he left the home, our home, to be in the Navy, and then only saw him intermittently throughout my life due to the fact that he was always battling with, with my parents about one thing or another, and just excluded me, from his life. I didn't do anything to him or anything else like that. I was just literally just a toddler. But the point being, I was in my late 40s, and we had visited, and I love my older brother dearly. He's a very funny guy in many ways, and I have the best times when I'm with him and we can have fun. until it's not fun anymore. And
Mm.
but I was throwing a football to him, and we were out there. And again, he's here. I am almost 50. He must have been in his 60s. And we're throwing a football, and my son was out there. And he says, "Wow, you and Uncle blah blah blah, you two guys get along great together." And he says, "Why do you look so sad afterwards?" And I said, "Well, that's the way my mind operates." And I throw this one out there for the audience. I hope it gets a little tear from somebody, because it's true. I said, "Wow, it's a very profound moment." And my son says, "Why? Because you're throwing the football?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm 50 some odd years old. It's the first time I've ever thrown a football with my brother."
Yeah.
And I love my brother and have funny stories, but we have no relationship today, due to some other reasons that have nothing to do with me. And he's had a hard situation a couple of years ago, and I think was a little off base mentally there and emotionally with things. And he's a very emotional guy anyway. But the point being is, hey, that's I'm a 69-year-old man now, and yeah, I'm a lucky guy. I have family members, I have friends, people who love me. I love people. I've done nice things, but would I love to see my aunts and uncles? I have an uncle that's still alive. I never hear from him. I have an aunt that's still alive. I've reached out. I never hear from them. I have other people that are family members, and they just, that's just the nature of our family. People are their culture is to be close in their own little coven, as it were.
Yeah.
Their own little
Yeah.
pack of people, and then they're not rude to anybody. They just don't give a shit. And you might get somebody on Facebook to say hi to you or this or that or whatever, but there's no real substance to it of any depth. So does that sound familiar to any of you folks who are out there listening to the show? If you're contemplating having a vendetta of, proving your point that you're right and the other person is wrong, well, you've got a lot that you're going to give up. And a lot of other people are going to be forced to give up things that they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to give up their cousins and nephews and nieces and other people like that. And for what purpose? Nobody's going to get out of life alive. It's why on my old show, Mind, Body, and Spirit, my favorite show is my Christmas show, which I have to throw out there again. I did last year on Scrooge, on A Christmas Carol. My favorite.
Yeah, that was a great show. I miss the Mind, Body, Spirit.
Yeah. It's a nice thing. Think of it. Scrooge isn't a loser. He's a winner because he learns how to redeem himself.
Mm-hmm.
He finds out what's important, which is the question, Paul, for all the delightful people that are listening to the show today. If we hit one of you out there today, and you have a brother or a sister or a mother or a father, what do you have to lose by not being right? I'm not saying if somebody's poisoning your food or trying to hurt you or shoot you or beat you up or do terrible things, but think of it. The holidays are a wonderful time to put things into perspective, and you have a rebirth with the new year. You have an opportunity to set things right. And the way to set things right is to not have to be right, to just accept people for who they are. It's just like the relatives that I talk about that are the way they are to me. It is the way that it is. I'm not going to change them. But I don't have to be hateful to them. I can leave the door open, hoping, that they might walk in, if that's the way things are meant to be. But I don't want to be an active participant in making, people hate me. One of those things.
Yeah, and I think that's a good message if you're one of these people who are, you're listening to the show and you're the one who's carrying the vendetta, or you're pushing people away for no apparent good reason that you can really think of. Well, I don't like them, or I don't like their political view, or I don't, I don't like their religion or whatever it might be. That's something to definitely think about. Why you would be pushing away people or hurting people because of something so trivial. Something me and my wife always talk about this time of year, and we do every year, and we've said it again this year. We put up the tree, we have the lights in the house, and we watch the Christmas movies, we listen to Christmas music, we talk, we hang out, with you guys, and we
Hmm.
just say, we have such a nice season,
Hmm.
and we always try to have nice holidays. We all had a nice Thanksgiving. This was, our first Thanksgiving, with you guys and
Hmm.
old friends of Dorothy's. And we always say, why wouldn't people want to be a part of that? Why do people want to have holidays where they're just sitting around being overly critical of other people, or being mean to other people, or all year long sitting there, well, look how, looking at themselves saying, well, look how great I am, look how smart I am, the arrogance thing, the full of themselves. And I know some people that are this way,
Hmm.
that you can't get that out of your own mind for a minute, to say, geez, what about the other person?
Hmm.
But now, like for me, I mean, you may find that you're the kind of person where you're wearing a different shoe on a different foot, where you're just tired. You may not be holding the grudge, but you're just tired of being the one that tries to make peace when it never really works. For me, my story is, when I was a kid, my father, he tipped the bottle a little too much. He had a temper. He was verbally abusive to, me and my brother, to also our mother. He was not a good husband, really. My mother was a really nice person. I mean, one of the best people, I think, you could ever meet once you really got to know her. And she really stuck it out. She stuck it out for, her family, for the kids. She always tried to make the holidays nice. My grandparents were alive. My grandmother was a really good person. We had good holidays, despite the little things that made them kind of peculiar sometimes, which would be, my grandfather and my father would drink a little too much, or a lot too much. My grandfather was an abusive drunk. He was always really good to me and my brother. So, but we had nice holidays. But after my grandmother passed away, and it was the same thing. We had my mother's side of the family, my father's side of the family, and there were just certain, my mother was totally estranged from her family. Her father told her if she married my father, he'd never speak to her again, and he didn't. She didn't reconnect with her family until, I think, the spring or summer of 1991 or 92. There were other members of my, on my father's side. They just wanted to hang with themselves. They wanted nothing to do really with us. And me and my brother were always labeled as the weird kids, because, they were the kind of families that they wanted their kids, cut wood, ride dirt bikes, and do all this, kind of crap. And, we were comic books and superheroes and more imaginative. So to them, we were the weird kids. We were always weird. There was, something kind of wrong with us because we were that way. But after, my grandmother passed away, and then, my mother passed away in like 2012, I believe it was. And the family just absolutely disintegrated. My father, I speak to him now. I talk to him a handful of times on the phone throughout the year. Uh, he doesn't really celebrate any of the holidays. He might sit down and have dinner with my one uncle, but He will never call. He has our number. He doesn't call. The only time he will call is if somebody he thinks is significant passes away, and he thinks I should know.
Hmm.
But most of them I haven't seen in so many years. I was like, well, that's too bad. I remember that person, but I don't have really any attachment to them. So it just really kind of crumbled at that point. My brother, I don't know. I don't know if he listens to these podcasts on YouTube or not. If he does, great. If he doesn't, that's great too. I would say right out to him, even if he were right here, I have no idea what his deal is. He became the kind of person that growing up, you could have conversations and imaginative conversations and talk about various things to a person who just wanted to talk about himself, what he's doing, what he wants to do, to a person that if he has new friends in his life, he wants nothing to do with you unless he needs something. So if he feels he's riding high, new girlfriend, new friends, you won't hear from him for, a very long time, which I haven't. And I just became the kind of person with friends, with family. I've had a lot of friends that I was very good to, or me and Dorothy were very good to, that we had mutual friends years back. Just decided, one day we were kind of treated like the enemy, and they disappeared, and were left there holding the bag. And you try to make amends and find out what exactly happened, and you don't really get any straight answer. So we became just the kind of people that all of our lives being the peacemakers to the people now that say, you know what, God bless them. If they want to talk to us, they know where we live, they know our email, they know where we are on social media. We're just kind of done being the kind of people saying, hey, what happened? What's wrong? Are we going to see you for the holidays? Are we going to see you again? Period. We just kind of got fatigued being that person or those people,
Hmm.
because the response is always kind of the same anyway, or ends up going right back to the same old position that we started in. So it's up to them. We don't hold grudges. We don't sit around going, those lousy SOBs. Hope they burn in hell. Hope they're having a lot. We don't do any of that. We wish everyone well, but sometimes, and I know there's a lot of people that I talk to, in the kind of work that I do, that are in that very position.
Hmm.
And I say just that. Sometimes it's okay just to say, you know what, I'm not going to go banging on anybody's door anymore. I've been there, I've done that, and now it's up to them. That's between them, God, and their own
Right.
conscience, I guess. So that would be my story to share a little insight to the listener.
Well, what's another thing too? It's very funny. I did a wonderful show on caretaker fatigue with a very famous guy called Dave Nassani, Caretaker Dave. He's a best-selling author, a TED Talk speaker, and everything else like that. And with people who have when it's yourself, if you're holding vendettas, it's very easy to stop that behavior.
Mm,
That's simply a matter of choosing and understanding, using a little cognitive behavioral therapy in there on yourself. And that's an overused term of saying just, looking at things clearly and accurately and looking at the effect on you. That if you're going to hold vendettas for no good reason, or even a good reason, you better dig two graves, one for you and one for the person that you have a vendetta against, because
mm,
there's a lot of unhappiness and some bad stuff that's going to follow that. Not everybody, sadly, and again, people may disagree with this, not everybody is a person who's necessarily good for you or me. And we're not necessarily good for every other person. And sometimes, very sadly, we have to keep our distance from some people,
right.
sometimes permanently, sometimes just for a period of time. But I think to be helpful to the audience out there, you have to sit down and really make a determination and saying, is the real reason that I'm not hanging out with this person or they're not hanging out with me because we had a disagreement over whether the Patriots really a good football team? Or did mom treat us unfairly when we were kids? They're not like justifiable reasons. They may be to you, but you have to make a decision. You have to look at your values, be mature, be grown up, and say, is that really a good decision? And do I really want to be close to that person again, or do I want to have some kind of interaction with them? And if you do, let me, instead of all these complex, convoluted psychobabble techniques and everything else that you have to go through, these elaborate systems, how about the first thing is just looking in the mirror and saying, do I really want to hang out with Paul or Stan? I'm just using our names, with Paul and Stan anymore. Okay, I do. Then what can I do? Let me send him an email. Let me get him on the phone. Let me stop by his office at work if we work in the same place. And you know what you can do? You can come up to somebody and say, it's as simple as this, folks. Here's the line. Say, you know something? We haven't had lunch in the longest time. We haven't been connected in the past 2 years. I sure miss you. Can we go out for lunch sometime? Can we go out for a cup of coffee? Keep it simpler. Can we go out for a cup of coffee? And just take it from there. Just take it from there. You don't have to go over and relive why you're not talking. If that's going to be a good thing, it can happen naturally. Be authentic. And the second part of being authentic, and here is a little psychology from a wonderful psychologist, Carl Rogers. He was wonderful because all of his therapy was based on something he called unconditional positive regard for people. So if you're a therapist, if somebody's a child abuser, if they're a criminal, if they're a wife beater, a husband beater, if they're an adulterer or an adulteress, this is where you're almost like being a good Christian. You have to have, you don't condone behaviors on people, but you have to have unconditional positive regard for that person as a human being. That you're there to help them, that you're there to give them the proper feedback on things, to try and move them in a positive direction. If that's your value system, it sure is mine, both as a psychologist, the APA would approve of that, and as a Christian, the New Testament would approve of that. So there's no dispute between those two things. So those two little simple things, you don't have to be in group therapy for a million years. You don't have to go back and rehash everything that happened to you as a kid. You don't have, if you wanted to open the door for your ex-wife and she's, I'm a woman, I could take care of it, and you got in a big fight over it or something like that. If you want to have a more civil relationship over the holidays because your kids are involved or because it was somebody that you used to love or care about, you just want to be a decent person, you don't have to go into any big elaborate thing. You can just say, gee, it would be nice to have a cup of coffee, and then just understand that that person is a person, that they see things through their eyes. That while
I think that.
And just go from there. Does that make sense?
I do. I think that's good advice. And, I also add to that if things go back to the, being odd or strange, you have to ask that question, is this somebody I want to spend time with?
That's right.
And, I've done that. My wife has done that, someone we were friends with years ago. And, we tried to bridge the gap, just like you said, hey, it's been a while, man. Where you been? Let's, what have you been up to? Why don't we go out to the diner? Why don't we grab some lunch? It's, and we did. And it just afterward still got awkward and strange. And I think for me and also my wife, we have the wonderful luck, and I've had this all my life. Maybe I'm a magnet for these kind of people, making friends with people that are just that. You're great when they don't have anything or anybody else, and they're down on their luck, and they're sad or alone, or things aren't going well. But once things start picking back up, they're making a little money, or maybe their old friends come back into their life that kind of shove them off for whatever reason, or they make new friends. Hey, man, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You were the pastime, the in the meantime friendship. until I got back on the horse that I want to be on.
Yeah, and
And
that's what sometimes we choose people because we like to be more powerful than they are. We like to be a helper. We like to save people. We like people who are sometimes who we feel sorry for them and they're down and out. It makes us feel good about doing that. And sometimes it's just because people are sweet. And when they see what they think are nice people having a hard time, they become very loving towards them. And when you're loving towards somebody, you usually make a friendship with them, on some level. And then when a person is healed up, like you're describing, maybe they were being friends, with you or me or somebody else, not so much because they wanted to, but because they needed to
yeah,
at that time. And that's something, for as sad as it is, that you have to think about. And it's not a vendetta. It's just saying, I can be with this person, but should I be with this person? I've seen
yeah,
people be very overly close to an ex-wife or an ex-husband or something, and I've said, "Hey, man, that's not a good thing." And they'll say, "Why? We're good for." Hey, if you're good friends, why aren't you still married? You now have another husband, you have a wife, you have other things. I'm not saying you should be rude or hateful or you can't say hello, but you're spending too much time with that person. You're becoming enmeshed in their life.
hmm
Or it might be somebody maybe you have a drinking problem and you have another person who is a chronic alcoholic or a drug user, and they're leading you into those type of behaviors, right? And it's not a good thing. It's that's not a vendetta. That's called good judgment. That you
oh,
might have
definitely.
to give that person a wide berth. If you want to help them or do things, you have to do it from a distance. And since this is a spiritual show, let me give you another tip on something. I was telling it to one of our guests at the Thanksgiving thing. I know on shows that I hear with spiritual things that people are always talking about. Can you converse with God? Can your prayers, are your prayers answered? I don't know. I'm a great believer in keeping things simple. When you have these issues about vendetta, when you have these hard things, and I'm sure in all major religions they have some version about this, take some time each day alone in a meditative way to simply sit and think about what your concerns are with God. If that's what you
hmm
believe in, if you say that you believe in a divine presence, if you say that you believe, if you're a Christian, you believe in the Holy Spirit, you believe in those things. I'm not telling you if you're Jewish or you're an atheist, you have to do it. Then do it in a different way. Commune with the spirit of the universe or some other thing, or just with your better side in your own head, whatever it is. But put your mind at ease and put that situation out there. And now again, this is a spiritual show. This is a spiritual component. You could do this as a critical thinker, but you can also do another thing. You can do as a spiritual person and saying, God, I put this in your hands. What would you do? What would you advise me to do? Give me some guide. Give me a sign. Help me out with this one. Talk, talk to, talk to God like I'm talking to Paul right now. Now, other people may think that's crazy. I certainly don't. I talk to God all the time, all the time, all the time.
Yeah,
I'm not talking to a genie. I'm not talking to a make-believe friend. I'm not doing any of those things. I sit and get into a meditative state, and just like I'm talking to you right now, I can do the same thing. You might be surprised at some of the heightened awareness that you get on things. And if you really let your guard down and don't get overly complicated, you might be very surprised in the fact that God's going to be answering you back on a more than regular basis.
yeah, I agree with
I'm
that,
being
and
serious,
I tell people that all the time too on this
that
show. If
don't
even
make
if
it
you're
so
all alone,
complicated.
even if you're all alone for the holiday, light a candle, close your eyes, just ask God or, guardian angel to draw near and just speak, as if someone is right there with you because they are, you'll feel it around you, you'll feel it within yourself. And you do get those things that just rise up to your consciousness that, you're actually communing or fellowshipping with this higher power, and it can be very, very comforting to do.
Yeah, and be honest. It's very hard to stand in front of a bunch of people and say, "I feel lonely, I feel abandoned, I feel afraid, I feel unloved." Nobody wants to say those things. You don't want to say them on a podcast. You don't want to say them to other people. That's why people go to a therapy group, or they go to a religious Bible study, or a retreat, or therapy programs, or whatever, self-help things for people. But in the privacy of your own mind, lay that stuff out honestly. That's the longest journey, not to give you a bunch of cliches, but it's true. The longest journey begins with the first step.
Hmm.
And the first step is being honest with yourself, being honest, in this case, this is a spiritual show, being honest with your spiritual side, and starting with that, coming to grips with that. It's perfectly normal to be alone at times. And it may go on for quite a bit of time in your life. You may have had the greatest life in the world, and all of a sudden a spouse dies, or you have an illness, or you can't think straight, or some terrible thing befalls you. And probably in your audience, Paul, there's going to be all of that and much more. Sadly, there's no instant solutions, but many times out of these very, very dark moments, I know in spirituality, sometimes it's called, hitting the wall.
Hmm.
You're with you're with God, and you hit a wall, and that's where spirituality is a wonderful thing, where other kinds of things are wonderful too, but you don't want to throw out that spiritual side. And you can reconnect with family and friends, not everybody, but once you start laying it out in your own mind, then it's a lot easier to say, if somebody says, "Why do you want to have coffee now?" To be honest and say, "Because I miss you, because I'm lonely when you're not around. We used to have a wonderful time together." And the worst will come
So,
to you naturally.
yeah, and again, as I was saying before, ask that question if you should, if this is a healthy
Mm-hmm.
relationship.
That's right.
As I was talking about that one particular friend that my wife and I had, a number of years ago. And I've made friends, as you said, with all those different kinds of people. People you wanted to help, people that seemed like they needed help, or people that just seemed like they were very nice. This was someone who just seemed like they were, decent individual. But after hitting that wall, as you said, a couple times, it just came down to, we asked that question: is this somebody that I really want to spend time with now? And honestly, my answer is no. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't completely shut the door on anybody, but it's okay too to make that peace and say, you know what, if that family member, if that friend really really wants to be around me, they know where to find me. The door's open. They have to walk through. Because I get that.
Yeah.
My wife gets that. You do get a little bit of that fatigue, being the one constantly showing that you're the one that cares. You're there for this person. If something is wrong, they're there. If they disappear, you'll seek them out to make sure that they're okay. It's okay to say, you know what, I've done that, you know, all the time, most of the time, 100% of the time in this relationship. Now it's kind of their turn. You
Yeah, and
know,
you can
if
also tell people that you're apprehensive about starting a relationship with them on the way that they've described it. And you can tell them, you're not going to rule it out, but you're going to have to go really slow
yeah.
and outline the parameters of things in a real easy going way. You might be with certain people who want to have coffee with you and say, I don't feel I can see you face to face right now.
Hmm.
Let's do a little texting, and then maybe go on the phone, or do a little Skype or something like that.
Yeah, they're all good things, and again, keep in mind, it's not a bad thing to once in a while say, you know what, you kind of want that person to take the step to let you know that you mean something to them, not that you're just always casting the line, hoping that
That's
snag
true.
them with the hook and reel them back into your life temporarily, and then they disappear again or do whatever they're going to do. So,
Mhm.
again, you have to be a little bit smart, a little bit honest, a little bit meditative on these things, and come to the right conclusion where you feel comfortable, and you're not dragging around the resentment or the sadness, or sitting around every day
Mhm.
going, oh geez, I miss so and so. My best days are behind me. You don't want to get into that sort of thing either.
No,
You know,
no.
Definitely not.
Yeah, this was a very nice show to do today. I feel it's very spontaneous. I think it was very meaningful on a scientific, psychological basis. I think it was very meaningful on just an average, like if you're talking to somebody at a bar or having a drink or a cup of coffee. And I think it was very meaningful in a spiritual way for me, doing all these things. And I think, the real bottom line, Paul, for everybody is to understand that you're being affected by many forces in the world. The things you read, the things that you see. I'm not talking about fake news. I'm talking about real things that happen to you, the things that you're exposed to. And that while we all need privacy and quiet and some solitude, those are good things. It's also good to be connected to human beings.
Hmm.
That's why people will tell you, you are your brother's keeper, or they have things like, the Good Samaritan, or, they have little sayings like one log doesn't burn brightly and things like that, because it's a lot nicer to go through this journey in life knowing that we have other people along with us, and that that you can accept that they have different points of view, that things are not always going to go right, that it doesn't have to be the end of the line with
Hmm.
things. So I don't know about you, Paul, but I think we've thrown a lot out on the wall there for people to get over the estrangement pattern, to look at it. And if you are in that estranged period, if I can add something again to the show, it didn't get done in a day. You might be like me, where you're 69 years old and you're not going to get all those people back, but there might be one or two people that you can get back in your life. And hey, man, that's pretty darn good.
It is. It's a win.
Yeah, big win.
Yeah, I thought this was a great show too. It's a little bit longer of a show, but that's okay because we don't have the time restrictions that I had on the other network.
Hmm.
And I thought this was great, and I hope that there's something in here that somebody can relate to, and maybe helps them, as you said, win a couple people back, or at least make peace with that. Maybe this person isn't around anymore, and maybe it's for the best. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to close the door and nail it shut. You can always leave it open. You can always leave it in a crack. You can leave the door unlocked and say, you know what, if they want to, and if it's meant to be, they can always walk on in, and we can try to make amends, and that's okay too.
Absolutely. I think it was a great show. I think we ought to do another one real soon on something else. This made me feel very good in my spirit to do this show today. I'm being serious.
Yeah, yeah, me
And
too. I definitely agree with that, and we always seem to have that. We do have to do more shows together, because we always do have a certain chemistry and a certain feeling. I think that we put out that
oh, yeah,
I think that's really people enjoy it, and it touches them in some way. And I know it does me, and
touches
it does.
me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And I probably won't be on your show on the spirit side before Christmas. And I would be remiss if I didn't say to everybody out there, happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas to those people who celebrate Christmas like I do, because it is a Christmas celebration. It's not a holiday celebration for me. And for those of you, again, who don't celebrate that or celebrate your own holidays, how wonderful. God bless to everybody. And if the show helped you out or made some sense, let Paul know or myself. And it's not about an ego. It would just be nice to know that somebody got a little bit of something out of the show. There's many ways of looking at this. This was just one of them. So
Absolutely.
good luck in your life.
Yeah. So with that, I'm gonna close us out here, and thanks for being on the show, Stan. It was awesome.
Pleasure.
And for all of you out there, I echo that sentiment for happy holidays. Of course, you'll be hearing from me again before Christmas time. But for me and Stan, happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas. And we will see you next time here on the Spirit Side.